Hello, my name is Ravi Shankar. I'm the Senior Vice President and Chief Marketing Officer at Denodo. Today, it's a pleasure for me to talk to you about regulatory compliance. This is a very important topic for many of the companies, more particular in some of the industries like in financial services or pharmaceutical industries, which are heavily regulated. The requirement is to be able to file for many of the business operations with the government, which has the oversight, and there are stipulations that they need to do that on a quarterly basis, annual basis, monthly basis, and so on. That puts a lot of overhead on companies, and most often these regulations apply to very large companies in these industries. In order to honor that, what they have to do is they have to file these reports in a timely fashion. There is a deadline associated with it. And they have to certify that the information in there is accurate, which means you're putting your company and yourself, the person who signs, quite often a chief executive officer or chief financial officer on the line. Now, it is very important to have these information submitted to the regulatory agencies correct, and that takes time within an organization. Why? Because the data from which they pull these reports is usually dispersed across multiple different systems, and quite often, if you're a global organization, in multiple different countries. The way the companies have been resorting to do this is to move the data from all these different systems across these different geographies into a centralized system, so that way they can run any reports that is needed in order to produce it for the regulatory filing. Quite often the challenge here is that moving the data from such places places an enormous constraint on the resources and the amount of time it takes, and by the time the data is actually moved, which is the case it's replicated to the central location, the data has already changed in some of the other places. So it's never accurate, it's never up to date from that particular perspective. And also the challenge comes to in terms of the quality of the data itself. How do you trust the data that is actually being moved here? Quite often it goes through a sense of translation, and in that some of the things could be lost and it could be distorted. So the quality problem as well to it. So what is the solution? So how do you kind of fix this problem of traditionally doing regulatory reporting by consolidating the data into a single solution? The way to do this is to bring about a new approach. In my opinion, it's a more modern, more agile approach to integrating the data to provide these reports in a timely fashion. And that is called a logical data management. The logical aspect contrasts with the physical. Physical is what you have been doing before, consolidating all the data, moving the data physically into a system. The logical approach tells that you leave the data wherever it is and you connect to the data and you have a virtual view of that information. So it is powered by a technology called data virtualization, more aptly so, that provides this logical data management. And it allows you to connect to this data wherever it is and bring them in a unified fashion into a central place as a view, not physically moving the data. And then you can run your reports on it to submit that to the regulatory authorities. Now, what are the benefits of doing that? The first one is the speed. Since you're not moving the data, it's much more faster to connect to the data and have that virtual view of it. The second one is the accuracy that actually comes with it. So because the data in the original systems are accurate, as it comes into the central place, the same level of quality is transmitted, so the reports are high quality. The third one is the real time or the freshness of the data. The data that actually comes from the sources, as it is continuously authored, immediately reflects. There's no lag time in centralizing this data. So it is much more fresher and much more real time in the data that comes together. So using this logical data management approach, many of my customers in the financial services, in the pharmaceutical, in the healthcare and so on, have initiated and been successful in complying with the regulatory requirements of the agencies across the world. And more so important now that there are many data privacy regulations in order that are prohibiting companies from moving the data, this comes in very handy because the data virtualization does not move the data, it connects to the data wherever it is, so it is compliant even with those kind of regulations. So at the end of the day, the logical data management powered by data virtualization is a much better alternative and powerful way to do your regulatory reporting, and I strongly recommend that. If you have any comments on this topic, feel free to submit here as comments, and I'm happy to respond to them. Thank you very much for listening.